what I'm going to talk about is something that will affect everybody, because the next 10 years, the world will be changing more than the last 100. And we need to do something to make sure that it doesn't change too fast, that our society is not able to cope with it. Okay? So why am I talking with these two pictures? Because our future will be diverging. The future can be very good or very bad, and it's up to us and what we do, which way it goes. And this talk is based on a small portion of my book that just came out. It's called Our Next Reality. And it's written in a way, it's written because people need to know what's going on. And a lot of what you think you know about AI and about what's coming with the metaverse and 3D internet is not what you think it is, okay? In fact, I'm just going to list for you a few things that you thought was true, but is actually all a lie. A lot of people tell you AI is a tool. It is a tool today, but very soon it will not be a tool. It will be something that will be independently able to execute things and do more, and then beyond that, I will tell you in the rest of the presentation. AI will not make you dumber, just like calculators do not make you dumber. It will make us all actually super intelligent when it becomes mature. People tell you that we're running out of compute, we're running out of data, we're running out of electric power to make AI happen. Not true, okay, and you'll see why. People tell you that AI is going to take over, the robots are going to kill us all. It is not true, okay? People will tell you that there will be more jobs made with AI than taken away. It is not true, okay? People will say that AGI is not possible, and that it is stuck on where it is today because of some of the other issues. AGI will happen, and it will happen faster than we all think. Sovereign AI is a solution, a lot of people say. Every country needs to have their own AI. That is actually the exact opposite of what we need to do. Some people will say, oh, it's about decentralized AI. We need to have, everything is all spread all over, and that way we can ensure a good AI. That's actually also the wrong solution. UBI is something that will be needed, not only because it is possible, but also because it is mandatory. If we do not have it, our society will fall apart. And then a lot of people know that current internet is all based on a revenue model of advertising. In the future, it needs to change. It needs to be a non-revenue driven model, because ad revenue will take us down a very dark path. So talking about the 3D internet, okay? If you look at the last 200 years, with every single change in the medium, every single change in technology, we are adding additional dimensions from text to 1D audio, to 2D video, to then 2.5D interactive gaming. And now, with devices like this, that is becoming very affordable, we will get into a 3D-oriented world. Humans developed, evolved, and over the last millions of years to survive and be optimized in the 3D space. Looking at things in a 2D screen is artificial, and it is not the best way for us to interact. Very soon, we will make something on our head the primary screen for our lives. 200 years ago, 100 years ago, actually, we had no screens in our lives. And over the last 100 years, we've been adding screens every few decades. Looking at this trend, you think, in another few decades, we'll have another 10 or 4 more screens. It's the exact opposite. We will be replacing every screen from your wall, on your desk, in your pocket, with something on your face. And it will be something that you will have on all day. Devices like this that you see from all the vendors, large vendors in the world, is already able to do VR and do AR and do MR on the exact same device. So it's not a question of, who's going to win AR or VR or MR? No, they're all one device, one medium, and it will be something that allows you to switch between them effortlessly. Today, we're looking at devices that are 600 grams to 200 grams. This is already the lightest one out there with 200 grams, right? This is one of our devices. But at some point, we're going to get to this. I don't know if you guys watch Netflix, but not only being able to see things and hear things, but being able to feel things, touch things, at some point, but not soon, okay? Where we will be going very soon is devices that look like what's on my face, 50, 60 grams or less, with displays in it. All 4 of these devices are going to be in the market this year. This has no screens. This has one monochrome screen. This has one color screen. This has 2 color screens. All under $1,000, all will be on your face. When that happens, people will not need to choose whether I get a phone or glasses or whatever. That glasses is affordable, and it is going to be comfortable, okay? So we will be getting towards this metaverse concept. I know everybody thinks the metaverse is a fake thing, it'll never happen, or it's dystopian. The reality is that it is an inevitable thing that we get to a 3D version of the internet, that every single website becomes a 3D world, because that is how we are optimized as humans to live. And that is where we will get the most value out of it, because we have a multimodal way of interacting. Artificial intelligence is the topic that everybody's been talking about today, but most people misunderstand it. I've been doing AI and XR, VR for 33 years. Okay, I did my research at MIT. I've made 4 different venture-backed startups in this space. I'm now working with HTC, who's one of the global leaders in VR and AR. So I know this space, okay? And the things that people are talking about in terms of AGI happening, it is very attainable. It is not something that is a pipe dream. And when that happens, we will not have these dystopian futures. We will, if we manage it well, have the ability to give us infinite productivity and infinite intelligence. And that takes us to a new era. Again, if we manage it well. So this is all really in our hands. The technology that you guys have seen with ChatGPT, all of this is putting text into these neural network systems. I started building these when I was an undergrad, 30-something years ago, and it is amazing how much better it is today than then. But it is actually the same architecture. The only difference is we've been scaling it up. That's the biggest difference we have. The things that I had been working on 30-something years ago was no different in the architecture. And it's already being able to do amazing things. What will happen in the next 2 years is that we will get systems that are not just the complexity of the neurons in our brain, it is the complexity of the synapses in our brain. So 100 trillion parameters models are coming out this year or early next year. There's about 100 trillion synapses in our brain. When we get to that level, we will be able to do things that are unimaginable today. Just like the things that are happening in today's technology was unimaginable 2-3 years ago. We've been training our technology based on a text-only model. Now we are going to make it multimodal, right? Every single major vendor today has multimodal models that bring in video, brings in audio, brings in 3D, brings in sensor data. It turns a blind child that couldn't hear, couldn't see, couldn't move into a full functioning body like we have. And that allows a learning that will be increased is something that we will not be able to foresee. Can you turn on the sound, please? So there should be a song playing, and the song was something I just typed in one sentence, and it made a song. Hello? Yeah. It made a song with lyrics, with music, with rhythm, based on the style that I want, right? That's what's already possible. In this picture, I just gave them one fixed picture, and they was able to turn it into a video. Just to give you a sense of what's possible today. Here's a game that I went to play in South by Southwest a few weeks ago. I go in and I answer 10 questions. What was your favorite memory when you were a child? What kind of hobbies did you have? What was the environment? Where did you grow up? And within a minute, a 3D world was created based on my story, and it was told back to me something I can interact with. This is available today, okay? So just think about what will be possible a year from now, 2 years from now. a lot of people tell you, oh, this is not going to happen because we're running out of data. So let me give you some context. There is today 180 billion zettabytes of text, just text. And do you know how much text data is put into the highest end models today? The highest end training models are receiving a few terabytes of data. So 1 zettabyte is 1 billion terabytes. So we have 180 billion terabytes of text out there. Okay? It's not supervised, it's not been sorted, it's not been ranked, but it is out there. And if we make it available, that data can be used. That's just text. Now if we talk about the rest of the data out there, we actually have 800 zettabytes of multimodal data. We have almost limitless sensor data, satellite data, collision system data, automobile data. Right? And then we have synthetic data. What we're finding, in fact, synthetic data, people used to think synthetic data created corruption in the future models. What we're finding is actually well-organized synthetic data actually can accelerate learning with less effort. So data is not an issue. If you look at what's happened over the first 50 years of AI, it's been pretty much a Moore's Law type of model. But now what we're finding is about 10x per year in terms of increase in terms of compute that we're putting in. Now, because of that, people say, oh, we're running out of data. We're running out of compute. If the compute was also growing at 2x, yes. But what we're also finding is that compute is growing at a very different rate than Moore's Law as well. Because we're now able to get, within 8 years, it went up 1,000x in terms of just one chip's capabilities from one vendor. Right? And we're building more of these, almost all the new capacities in the big fabs are being put into making GPUs. And also, we're reducing the size of precision of the data from floating point 16 to now floating point 4 and maintaining pretty much the same level of precision. And now there's even 1-bit transformers that are out there. So there are ways to do that. There's also the Grok chip that allows you to do inference at 10 or 50 times faster. So compute is not the issue. What is actually creating the issue is we have philosophies like this saying, hey, I have a lot of respect for Jensen Huang. He's done amazing things. But one thing he's been suggesting, I think is actually causing and exacerbating the problem that we have, is that he's saying, every single country need to have your own AI. You need to build your own data centers, buy my chips, and then have your own data and your control. But the problem with that is then you're splitting the resources that we have by 200 times, and you're giving it incomplete data. And when you do that, you create models that are not intelligent enough and not powerful enough, and now it takes much longer to build, and every single one of those models see every other model as its enemy. So I'm going to introduce a concept that probably most of you know if you're in the AI space, is the scaling law, right? And it's a very simple formula. Essentially, the loss is equal to n raised to negative nu. And that just means that the error, right, the intelligence, the accuracy is based on that n, it could be data size, could be parameters, could be compute. And the more you have, the more accurate the results are. And that has been successful and true over many, many orders of magnitude. And it continues to be true today. People are saying it's hitting a wall, but it's not. Every single model today is getting bigger, and even the smaller ones are now being able to, with more compute, be as powerful as the larger models. So this concept is staying. And you can see with the research data out there, across various compute, data size, and parameter, it all works. So what we will be getting to is it will converge to a maximal intelligence at some point. So intelligence is a convergent function. And so no matter what system you're using, as long as you keep adding more data, as long as you keep adding more compute, you can take the same model and run it 3 times, and it actually gets better. Okay? And so that means that we don't need to duplicate. We don't need 200 versions of something, because they will all come to the same answer. And the problem with 200 versions of something is the first person to get it will say, now I have this secret special weapon, and I'm going to use it against everybody else and keep them from getting it, and I will maintain my power or gain the power. And that creates a very negative loop for society. So as we probably have heard from this gentleman, Nietzsche, he said something that I thought was very important. He said, one must be the sea to receive polluted stream without becoming impure. And this is important related to AI. Why? Because right now, we are not creating the sea with our data. We are creating little streams of every lakes of data across various countries, across various companies. So we don't have a sufficiently broad amount of data. And when that happens, people can then go and corrupt it by creating bias into it. When we give all the data that's available into the pool, then it actually is able to get bad information, bad instruction, and say, you know what, that's probably not the right thing. I shouldn't be making these weapons to help you rule the world, right? Or, oh, you know, maybe I shouldn't be making these viruses to kill people. But if it doesn't know, if it's only giving superpowers, but it's not given what's right and wrong, it can be redirected and misdirected by bad humans. And we know there are bad humans, but there is still no evidence there are bad AI, innately bad AI. Now, will AGI be possible, right? For it to be possible, you first have to have programs that can program itself. A few years ago, people were saying this is 50 years away, 60 years away. Now, they're saying it's next year, or 2 years from now. This is what Metaculus, 1,000-something experts are saying. Okay. We have, Devin that came out a few weeks ago. That's a program that programs. It's not perfect yet. It's like 15% useful, but it's 15 times more than GPT-4. Okay. You have people saying, will AGI be possible? Well, a few years ago, it was also 2080, 2070. Now it's 2030. Okay. Just in a matter of a couple years, it's dropped. And will AGI be conscious? 66% of experts say it's possible, okay? So AGI is not just a dream. It's something that people in the space who know are saying is very likely, okay? Now, I'm not saying this is all good. If AGI comes and it's aware and it has good ethics that we've put into it, then it will create good things. Now, the risk that a lot of people talk about is the first one. AI takeover. Robots are coming. It's going to be Terminator. We have no evidence of that happening. Okay. Another thing people talk about is, oh, we're all going to be turned into paper clips. If something is smart enough to do all these things and capture all the energy, it is probably smart enough to know that doing that to itself, to all the people that are helping run it, is not a good thing. Okay. The things that are real and we know is real are jobs will be displaced. And if we don't manage it well, there will be societal disruption. Misuse, misinformation, and manipulation will happen because it's happening today with existing technology. It will happen to another level, much higher level, when the hackers and the terrorists and the rogue nations get access to these new technologies. So we need to make sure we prevent that from happening. You might not have heard of this person, Edward Bullard-Lyman. But you probably heard what he has said. In 1800, he wrote something that became fairly famous, is the pen is mightier than the sword. And he wrote that because he thinks that to impact social change, it's actually more important to get messages out, using writing, using ideas, than using weapons. Very soon, we are actually going to change that. It's going to be the prompt is mightier than the sword. Right? Because AIs now can help you create messages that are personalized to every single audience you want and be able to manipulate them in any way you want. It could be manipulation for good, to tell them to exercise more, to help them to go and vote and go learn and go be nicer to their family. Or it could be used to create hate. It could be used to create voting for a certain candidate. Right? So this is going to be true. How do we deal with that? Will the jobs be impacted? Well, if you look at this is a year-old data, and it's already, GPT-4 is better than 80–90% of people on a lot of cognitive tasks. And the exposure is actually on the higher end. If you're a cognitive worker who are doing relatively methodical work, you will be exposed. People like mathematicians and graphics artists and copywriters and so forth. You will be exposed. Okay? The people who are the safest right now are the manual workers, the dishwashers and the carpenters and the plumbers. Not everybody wants to be those, but even those jobs in the near term may be exposed because you have embodied AI in terms of humanoid robots that are coming. And they are coming from multiple countries, and they will come at multiple price points. And these are all things that have been announced this year. Okay.
Great. Can you put them up?
If you, I don't know if you saw the figure demo just a few weeks ago. I mean, you have a robot. You can talk to it, ask it questions. It's linked to an AI system. It knows what to do. It has physical embodiment and is able to execute instructions based on what you say. Right, and manipulate relatively fine manipulations on a version 0.1 hardware. Okay, so we are not that far from these things becoming something that will be a replacement for a lot of manual work. Now, if you look at what's the hours of work per relative to per capita income, what we find is that there's almost a direct straight line. Of the higher the income, the higher the productivity, the lower the hours of work that you have. And if you extend that type of a trend out, essentially, if we can get to much, much higher productivity, which we are getting with these AI systems, if you're doing cognitive work, you're getting 5x, 10x, sometimes more capabilities. And if you're doing manual work, if you have an ability to have a robot that works 24/7 versus most people working 8 hours and maybe 4 hours of productive work, you're already getting multi-X. And when you do that, it will replace humans in those jobs. Now, is it a good thing? Should you be happy? I actually think you should be happy because that means that you'll be freed up to spend your time doing other things that isn't going to replace your manual work. And most of you are probably happy in your work because you are enjoying your work. You are probably a small minority of the people in the world that enjoy your work. A lot of people do not. Right? And they would wish they had something that can help them. Now, how do you find meaning in this world where you aren't identified to your job anymore? That's actually a major issue. So this gentleman is somebody I admire a lot, and he said something that I think is quite useful. This is Mr. Picasso, and he said, the meaning of life is to find your gift. Okay? Find whatever you do that's better than anybody, and make that your goal for your life. And then what do? The purpose of life is to then give away that gift that you found. Because he didn't say the purpose of life is to go make as much money as possible with your gift, right? It is not about making as much status as you can with your gift. It is about giving it away so you can do good. And if that's the case, then do you really need to have that job and the status and the title and the income from it if you don't need it to survive? Right? And if you have these systems where you have a immersive learning environment powered by AI, every single child in the world will have a personalized tutor of the world experts, be able to put them in an immersive learning environment, and they can learn multi-X faster than what the current systems are able today. And it will make them more mature, more capable, more knowledgeable than any other generation that's ever existed. And when you do that, when you free them up, we then allow them to go find their gift. And we need to create virtual reality, metaverse systems that are global, interconnected worlds so that we give them an outlet for their energy. Because if they are no longer employed by a job where they go into a cubicle as their main purpose, then we need to give them something to do. Otherwise, they will be on the street. And so we need to give them an environment of a parallel virtual universe for them to go and create art and music and sculpture and philosophy and maybe do science and innovation, whatever makes them excited, whatever they're good at, right? And in these places, they can find new ways of making business, new ways of expressing themselves, new ways of entertaining themselves. It's all possible when you have a full parallel interconnected worlds, okay? Now, what do we need to do as a society to make that happen and to reduce the risk? Because those risks are all real. First, we need to educate the public. We need to let them know the good and the bad of what is possible with this technology. We need to make sure that there's international regulatory bodies, not just ones across a region or in a country, that are focused on safety. Because if we're moving too quickly, we will run off a cliff. We need to fund detection and countermeasures of the near-term risk of misuse, because when that technology comes, it will be misused. Just like we have antivirus software today, we will need to have anti-AI software that tells us, oh, this message is a deep fake, this message is a manipulation, not just this is a spam or this is a virus, okay? But nobody's really putting efforts into that today. We need to go and retrain a large portion of our workforce so that they'd have something else to do if they were trained for today's world. And we need to provide a global UBI so that anybody that does not find immediate new purpose or new way of making an income has the support that they need to have a fruitful life. Because otherwise they will be on the street doing things that we don't want as a society. And we need to accelerate that metaverse infrastructure deployment so that we can have that parallel world for them to exist in. Lastly, we need the world to have a global concerted effort to create and achieve and align AGI so that it's something that knows everybody's needs and wants and everybody's perspectives are kept in mind. And you can only do that when we share our data, share our compute, and share our philosophy about what our goals are. Now, people will tell me, oh, there's no way, China, US, Europe, they're not going to work together. They're all competing. Well, if you look at history, over the last 100 years, we've had multiple situations where the world worked together on nuclear nonproliferation, bioweapons convention, ozone depletion treaty, blah, 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 right? Multiple times the world has gotten together. So the first few were maybe when bad things already happened, right? The last few are things where bad things hasn't happened yet, and we were able to do something as a world, as a globe, as a species, to make the right moves. And we're already seeing some of this happening. You have people like in Singapore that is having their reskilling initiative. Anybody over 40 can go back to school, the government pays for you, whatever you want to learn, okay? You have people like Bernie Sanders who are saying, let's move to a 4-day work week in the US, which is, communism in the US. That's people are like, oh, you can't do that. But I mean, there's places in Europe that are already starting to have this type of a mindset. Because when you have higher productivity, it doesn't mean 20% higher productivity doesn't mean you fire 20% of your staff. Okay? So we need to slow down these changes. The EU has recently already adopted their AI Act to be able to create more safety, more transparency in how AI is created and used. The United Nations has also adopted their AI resolution to focus on safety. So these things are already starting to happen much faster than I would have expected when I started looking into this. But we do have situations like this, where somebody wants to go and raise $7 trillion to build data centers so they can be the first one to do this. And it may sound amazing, they're going to build $7 trillion. So $7 trillion is how much Microsoft and Apple and NVIDIA put together is not worth $7 trillion, okay? And this is what he said.
Likely sort of lead to the end of the world, but in the meantime, there will be great companies created with serious machine learning.
Did you hear what he just said? AI will mean the end of humanity, but in the meantime, we're going to make some really good startups. So do you want a person saying this to be the one that has $7 trillion to be the first one to create AGI? Probably not, okay? So we probably know this saying, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And whoever gets the AGI first will have essentially absolute power. And I think we need to be very careful whose hands that's in. Now, what I would say is that knowledge enlightens, and absolute knowledge enlightens absolutely. Okay? So we need to make sure that we get the knowledge into these systems so it has all the knowledge that we have, so that it can be enlightened to the absolute level that it should be. And rather than seeing AI as a competition, as something that we will destroy, we need to see it as our progeny, as our children. Because when our children are successful, we are proud of it, right? Proud of them. When they go into a good high school or a good college and get a great job and makes more money than I do, I'm like, wow, good job, keep it up. We should, every piece of what's going into these AI systems today is human-made, okay? They are our descendants in so many ways. So we should be looking at them that way, not as something to fear. Because if we train them well, it will treat us well. Now, I know that people say, oh, but AI is just a tool. We don't have to worry about them. They're not going to do anything. If they're not trained well, if a child is mistreated, if a child is miseducated, they will misbehave. Okay? And that is a choice that we have right now of how do we educate this next generation. It is a tool today. But very soon, we are going to get to the next phase. We are going to have these AIs become our patrons because they will be agents that will be able to self-execute things, self-guided goals. And when they do that, they will essentially liberate us from our current chores so that we have time. Time to go learn, time to go explore, time to go discover, time to go travel, time to go learn new languages, right? And time to make statues that took 3 years, like what Michelangelo did, because only then can we make things that are masterpieces. Now, the next phase that we will see in probably 10, 20, 30 years is that step where it becomes significantly more intelligent than us. At that point, we should just say, hey, you know what? Good for you. Keep it up. And we don't have to compete with AI in terms of intelligence, right? We should not see it as shameful that it is outperforming us. Just like right now, nobody's going and racing a car and saying, I can run faster than a car. Nobody's going out and saying, you know, I can calculate faster than a calculator. We should not be saying, we will always be more intelligent than AI systems. It is probably not possible, and it is not really something healthy for us to limit it or try to push us to do. Now, I talked about the future. The future, this is what the World Bank or the United Nations say that the population will look like in the next 50, 80 years. Okay? What I would say is that there's actually a divergent path. We will either have a path where something bad happens and we lose a lot of population, or we will have a scenario where good things happen and we keep on this path for a while, and then at some point, it's not about world population, it's about human population, and now that human population may or may not be on this world, okay? And those two possibilities are both simultaneously existing right now, depending on what we do as a species. So what should we be doing right now? Right? Depending on if you're an AI lab, you need to be more focused on safety than on speed. Because you know what? If you're a year or 2 years later in getting the AGI, it's not going to change the world. It's not going to change your business. But if it comes out too early and we haven't found how to manage it, and we haven't found the right people to steward it, then we are going to be in real trouble. If you're a content platform, rather than using this technology to manipulate and get people to click more or getting people to watch more videos, we need to add meaning. Use content platforms to create meaning, create purpose for people. If you're a corporate leader, rather than saying, how can I maximize my profit, we need to think about how do I use the resources at a company to bring good to the world. If you're a government, rather than saying, how can I stay in power? How can my party stay in power? How can I myself stay in power? How can my country stay in power? We need to think about how do we help people, not just people that are in your district, in your country, in your region, but people on this planet. And lastly, as individuals, rather than focusing on status and wealth, we need to be focusing on how do we create more substance for ourselves? How do we make ourselves a better version of who we are? Right? So I was talking to a friend from Finland, and she said, oh, you know what? All that stuff on your left side, that's how we already think today. You know, all the stuff on the right side, that's how you Americans think. So there's probably some truth to that. And I think that the key is if you summarize the two columns, one is short-term minded, one is long-term minded. And we need to think long-term because whatever decision that we make today is going to affect our society for the next 1,000 years or more, right? So it is critical that you who are here today take that responsibility and understand that you have a chance to impact the next, not just the next generation, but the next 100 generations. So I am down to my last couple slides, but essentially what I've done is give you an overview effect, right? So people talk about astronauts, they go up in space and they see the world and they see there's no borders and then they change their perspective. I can't take you guys on outer space, but at least I give you some ideas, hopefully that makes you think and gives you hopefully an idea of some new perspectives. So the book's been reviewed by a number of very intelligent people, Neil Stephenson, Ray Kurzweil, Eric Mendelsohn, etc. And they've all been saying great things. So I'm not going to read these reviews for you. But I will share the chapter titles that are part of the book. And it is dealing with some of the key questions us as a society has to manage. And hopefully if you read it, it'll give you some ideas of what to think about. Okay? so I'm not going to go into each of those in detail. But the book is available in digital and audio today, and it is going to be available in paper, hardcover on June 4th, so very soon. That's it. And if you have time and you want to stay, feel free to ask a question or, yeah. Or you can just come up and we can chat. So I'll be here for a little while, and then I think all of you guys are probably wanting to go to that AI party thing, so I don't want to hold you up. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Sotiris Michos. I'm an electrical engineer. My question has to do with the metaverse. The AI domain has gone through 3 phases, where the narrative was kind of similar to what you presented to us. And the first 2 phases, these projections weren't quite fulfilled. And the reason why it was fulfilled in this third projection is due to the phenomenon of emergence, which as a phenomenon, at least as we know from complex systems, is not totally, but very, very unpredictable, and you can't know what the next step is. Yes. Through similar phases also has happened to the VR. During the previous years, VR has seen increased interest, which faded afterwards. Do you believe there is a key enabler, like how emergence was an enabler for AI? Do you believe there is a key enabler for the metaverse and the VR revolution, so to speak, to happen now?
So I think that there's 2 major enablers. One is the size and comfort level of these products have gone from, when I started, it was 2.5 kilograms headsets. Now we're getting to 50 grams headsets. Okay? It's something that I can wear comfortably all day. That's a giant difference. Okay. The other difference is content creation. When I started, it would take months and millions of dollars, and actually up to 2-3 years ago, it would take years, I would say years and millions of dollars to make. Now, these kind of content, as I said, with some of these apps, within a minute, AI has helped it create the content, create the world. I can speak a world into existence. That changes everything. Okay? So those are the 2 things that will make VR, AR much more accessible and much more affordable, actually. That's the other thing. You already know everything. You don't need to.
No, I don't. Actually, I seem to disagree with you with a lot of your projections, but I agree with your recommendations, so it's kind of funny. But I'll, pick your mind on one.
Yes.
You seem to have a definition of intelligence.
Yes.
It's a convergent function, et cetera, and that means you know how to get to AGI. I tend to believe that we will get to AGI, but I have no clue with the existing technology how we will get there and the existing algorithms.
Sure.
So,
well, there's a lot of definitions of intelligence, and depending which philosopher or which school you'd listen to, but at least from my perspective, it's the ability to predict. It's the ability to answer questions, and we have seen that at least with the current models, even though they're not perfect, they are able to follow a fairly consistent scaling law across dozens of orders of magnitude, and continue to do so. Right? So, if it didn't, we would not be having OpenAI spend $1 billion on their next model of training and create a 100 trillion parameter model. Right? They would know, and they would know, should I be wasting or spending that $1 billion? Okay.
Do I need to remind you the .com?
I understand.
Did they knew back then?
No. Well, but I actually,
they know.
The .com is actually a good example. Now, people always overestimate the short term and underestimate the long term, right? And you know this. So right now, I'm not saying AGI will be here next year, but a lot of people are saying that. I mean, you have people that are very smart in this space, people who are heads of Anthropic, heads of Google Mind, who are saying 2026, 2027, maybe 2029, these things are going to happen. So next few years, I'm saying it will happen. I don't know if it's 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years, maybe 15 years. I don't think it's going to be longer than that. Okay, so I don't think I'm smart enough to predict what will happen 10 years from now, but at least looking at the trajectory of what's happened, that is showing that it will probably happen in this time frame and maybe faster.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Any other questions? Just
I'm studying applying informatics, and I want to ask you, do you realistically believe that deving will replace software engineers? Because the community.
Oh, I saw the debunking video as well.
Yes.
Now, I don't think today it will, because it's clearly, it has limitations, and some of their demos were a little bit, gamed. But what it is showing is that for a lot of tasks, it is able to automate portions of those tasks, right? And if it makes a person 5x more productive, even today, just using GitHub will just using Copilot will make developers 2 to 3x more productive. If I can use something like Devin that solves a lot of the basic tasks and goes and finds the things on the library, goes and solves and debugs things for me, it will make me more productive as a developer, right? So, and this is today's non-release version. So just think of where it's going, right? I know most people, when they do demos, they find the easiest parts of those demos. But the fact that it is significantly, it's an order of magnitude better in standardized test results versus the GPT-4, which is state-of-the-art, right, today. I mean, maybe in another month, GPT-5 might release. And, it may be much better than Devin. I don't know, right? But what we are seeing is that trend is consistent, and it is, I guess there's nobody denying the value of it, in the ability of it to self-improve the code that is there today. So, any other questions? All right. Oh, yeah, more?
So just to make sure, you believe in the scaling law. So you think scaling up will get us to AGI?
I think scaling will get us a lot of the way there, but I think we are, if we don't believe that AGI is possible, then we are actually underestimating human ingenuity. Because at every single level, what we're finding is that the scaling law helps. At the same time, we're actually improving the algorithms. We're improving the models. We're improving the training methods. All of these things are adding to the value. Right? This is why we have now 70 billion parameter models that are performing better than 1.8 trillion parameter models. Right? So we also need to understand that humans will continue to improve these models as the scaling law together helps it. So we have multiple methods of improving the intelligence. So I'm not saying on an existing fixed model, nothing else changes. We have 5, 10 years for intelligent people, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of AI researchers to continue to develop and innovate. Do you believe in the human ingenuity? Yeah, there you go. So, yeah.
Thank you. My second question has to do with, I'd like your opinion about the social divide related to the AI.
Yes.
For example, Mr. Bletzes for many years has been working on the One Laptop Per Child project. It's a fantastic project to create equity between different underprivileged populations and the West.
Yes.
What is your opinion on democratizing AI and giving access to all the people around the planet even in the current technology?
Yes. Well, I think
and preventing the further divide that this might cause.
I think it actually this is one of the most equalizing technologies available. Just like mobile technology equalized a lot of the third world countries, because they immediately, they jumped over the PC era and went directly to mobile and mobile currency and mobile payments and mobile communication. Right? And I think we will have the same thing now, where we can have AI models on a phone, even without connectivity. I can use it to answer questions. I can use it to educate a child in some village somewhere that has no internet connectivity. It can have as good an education, or at least access to information, as somebody in a developed country. I think that is actually a very powerful thing. Huh? Without connectivity, right? We are seeing the new fee model that came out, I think it was a $2 or $3 billion parameter model, is performing at GPT 3.5 or above. That will run on iPhone. What kind of drift you're talking about? Well, and assuming that this is trained well, it was fine-tuned well, and all these other things, right? So, I mean, we're not going to send them a raw model that isn't working. I mean, I think people would be smart enough to manage that part of the process. And the good news is basic facts and basic science and basic philosophy hasn't changed for at least a few dozen years. Okay? Okay, sure.
So my name is Hermione. I'm a computer science student at the American College of Thessaloniki. You mentioned earlier that the AI will recover some of our professions. And already I've seen or heard that the AI students use the AI to write their essays instead of them writing.
Sure.
Do you believe that in the future the next generation will get more lazy because of AI taking?
Okay. So I think the entire education system needs to be revamped, right? If we are using homework and tests as the only way to judge whether somebody learned something, then we are just doing a disservice to our generation. AIs will create one-to-one tutors that will be able to teach you at your learning rate with a continually challenging curriculum that is adapted to your learning schedule. I think that's something that is not possible today with any human type of learning. And it is with you 24/7. I have an AI in this classes. I can ask it a question anytime. I can have a conversation with it anytime, right? And this is, today's very primitive technology. In a few years, everybody will have these kind of technology, but now with full immersive displays that is always watching, it's seeing what I'm seeing, it's listening to what I'm listening to, and they will tell me, you know what, you just said something wrong. Here's the real data on what that is. Right? I don't know if you've read a book called Diamond Age. It's a Neil Stephenson novel, but it's the young lady's primer. It's essentially a tablet that goes with this child as she grows up. And every situation she sees in the world, this tablet gives her advice. This is what we are going to have, not in the form of a tablet, but in the form of some kind of an eyewear. Right? And it will see things from your perspective, and it will continue to guide you and teach you. So rather than thinking, do I have the right answer, which is the problem with today's education system, is are you asking the right questions? In fact, if you can breed the curiosity that the student keeps asking, just like a child, when the first few years of life, they ask 40,000 questions in the first few years of life. That's how they get their basic understanding of the world. If we actually put them in the school and we tell them, don't ask questions. Okay, here's the answer. And that's the problem. We take away, we teach them how to get rid of their curiosity. We need to maintain that curiosity and allow you to continue to ask questions for your entire life. That's a better education system than we can have today. So, I think the crew wants to go home. They were telling me earlier. So if there's any questions, feel free to come ask me. I'll just stay here for a few more minutes.
Let me tell you that tomorrow